Hey, what's your guy's name again?
Fields, Sidney Fields. 87 years old. 87. How about your guy?
Ben Cantwell, 85. Huh? You think we'll make it to that age?
We? No.
Larry Childs and I were big fans of Abbott and Costello, and the main character and main writer of those TV shows was a guy named Sidney Fields, and we were crazy Abbott and Costello fans. In fact, we did a documentary on Comedy Channel, I think it was called at that time, about them, and we sat in Bud Abbott's backyard somewhere in the valley. And so we just used his name just for the fun of it, if anybody remembered that show.
Mr. Fields, I'm here to spend some time with you.
Oh, really?
Well, do you want to go out and go for a walk, get a cup of coffee?
With you? I'd rather be dead.
I was doing volunteer work for a foster grandfather. I had taken in this old man, and he turned out to be a very boring man. I expected an elderly man to have stories about the world and the Depression. This guy had nothing to say, and every week I sat there just bored out of my mind saying, this guy has no perspective on anything. I hate being here. When is this guy going to die? I mean, it was terrible to say that.
I'm grateful for every moment I have.
Grateful? How can you be grateful when you're so close to the end?
I actually brought the old man to that episode. He stood up and took a bow. I don't know if he knew where he was or what was going on. He was 111 at that time, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
In The Old Man, it's revealed that, that Newman is a mailman, and I think I contributed a line in that about the pressures of being a mailman. The day that the barcode reader breaks and it's the Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes Day. I love the idea that here was someone who was ready to blow at any given moment, and there was a career that went with it.
Let me ask you something. What do you do for a living, Newman?
I'm a United States postal worker.
Aren't those the guys that always go crazy and come back with a gun and shoot everybody?
Sometimes.
This time, I believe I had done like 4 or 5 episodes and was being used more when I came in and paired with Michael as a team. And in that episode, in the apartment, working with Bill Irwin, trying to steal his records, Michael decided he didn't like working this way, that part of the way he worked was on repetition and on feeling very secure in what he was doing, and mixing it up with another person on an ongoing basis was not something that really thrilled him.
I wanted to be very, very careful that we didn't become a partnership. I wanted to make sure that there was enough differentiation between his character and mine. Now, all along, everyone said there was plenty of differentiation, and when I've looked at the show more recently, I think they were right. I also think that there may have been a little ego bull going on at the time. Oh, that's all right. We'll bleep that out. I think there was a little ego. Well, I guess those are all signs to just not talk about that.
I was told that we'll figure a way, you'll come back. And in time I did, and that really begat me being the Goldfinger to Jerry's Bond that really made Newman what he was in later episodes.
The implant episode was a conglomeration of a lot of different tiny little scenes that I had lying around. One of them was, I thought it would be really interesting just if Jerry and Elaine were just chatting and some girl with large breasts walked by and Jerry looked at her for a second and Elaine goes, come on, they're fake. And then they just go back to their conversation and leave it.
It's a pretty girl.
Tremendous girl.
She's the one you went out with last night?
Yeah, I really like her.
You know, they're fake.
I don't think we looked for particularly hot button issues to deal with on the show. It's just that the floodgates were open. anything you wanted to deal with, you can deal with. You know, when you can do 22 minutes on masturbation and not only get away with it, but get away with it to rave reviews and Emmys, you can pretty much do anything.
For the episode entitled The Implant, we had to find not only attractive actresses that were funny, but they had to be well endowed as well. In Hollywood, that's not much of a problem, but we had a number of actresses audition for the role, and Terry Hatcher was, you know, not only exquisite, but funny, had attitude, and was a slam dunk for that role.
We go out on one date, and he asked me out for a second, and then out of nowhere, he calls me, cancels the date, and says he doesn't want to see me again.
Did he give you a reason?
Yeah, he's going back to his old girlfriend.
Really?
Said she's mentally ill.
I remember in the Implant episode that Terry Hatcher was a great sport about me grabbing her boobs. And I thought that was very team player-ish of her.
So, where were we?
I was just leaving.
Right, you were leaving.
I can't believe you sent a woman into the sauna to do that
That
to
was
me.
an accident!
I think you're both mentally ill.
Oh.
And by the way, they're real and they're spectacular.
I remember that "they're real" was her exit line. And I remember adding, "and they're spectacular." And that really made that moment.
Also in that episode, there was a story where George tries to get to Detroit on the cheap because his girlfriend's aunt has died. And I once did try to get a Death in the Family fare fraudulently because American Airlines had canceled my bonus miles. So I tried to do it the cheap way, and I literally said to them,
You want my friend to ask his uncle, a man who just lost his wife of 44 years, for a death certificate so that he can save a few bucks on a flight?
That would be $387 round trip.
All right, so you'll need my frequent flyer number, huh?
Yes.
Now, I had also been to a party where I noticed that somebody had double-dipped a potato chip. And that's where I was thinking, double dip, that sounds good. I had that lying around, so combine that, you know, the double dip served to ruin everything for George. And a fight at a funeral was another idea just lying around. So it was just a combination of just a million disparate ideas coming into one episode.
I couldn't imagine who they were going to get from my husband because in the first episode I mentioned, it's a good thing your father's in Chicago. So I knew that I had a husband. I couldn't imagine who they were going to get me. And then I found out that it was John Randolph, a darling, sweet, wonderful man and a marvelous actor.
The original way that was written was that Estelle really sort of wore the pants in the family, and John really sort of took a back seat to her. And so his energy was very soft in that episode.
John Randolph and I had worked together on Broadway. He had played my grandfather in Neil Simon's Broadway Bound. And John was 72 when we did the play, and here we were several years later. So I knew John was in his late 70s. And John is a Jewish man, but he never looked it. He had a very sort of waspy patrician look. He didn't look like me, and he didn't look like a Costanza.
This handicapped woman had an accident. Somebody gave her a used wheelchair with defective brakes.
Sons of bitches.
Anyway, I want you to pick up this big screen TV and deliver it to her.
Big screen TV.
You think you can handle it?
The following season, I don't know if John wasn't available or something about something made us want to change the actor, and so we brought in Jerry Stiller. Larry Charles suggested Jerry Stiller, and he was great, and we loved him. And then because of this syndication, they would keep rerunning the handicap spot with John Randolph. And it would seem odd that George would have two different fathers. So I prevailed upon Castle Rock and NBC to let me reshoot those scenes with John Randolph and replace them with Jerry Stiller, which is what we did.
This handicapped woman had an accident. Somebody gave her a used wheelchair with defective brakes.
Sons of bitches.
I want you to pick up this big screen TV.
Big screen TV?
And deliver it to her. You think you can handle that?
Jerry also had a different father in, I think it was The Stakeout from season 1, but we couldn't reshoot that because by the time that I got the idea of changing George's father, I also wanted to change Jerry's, but the characters had aged in the 4 years, and it would have looked weird.
John Randolph was an actor who, when I was making the rounds in New York looking for work, had been in a play called Command Decision on Broadway, and he was wonderful. And I was so moved by that performance that I ran upstairs to his dressing room. There he was, taking a shower. He says, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Jerry Stiller. I just want to tell you how much I love you." He says, "Sit down." And I started chatting with John and told him I wanted to be an actor. He says, "Just stick to it." He says, "Who knows, maybe we'll work someday." And that was it. And I actually did work with him at the Phoenix Theater, and he was blacklisted. He went through hell, didn't work for years. And then when he did finally come back, here I was replacing him in this show. And I had very mixed feelings, but not for long.
John Randolph had done a thing where he would bash me in the forehead whenever he was displeased with me. And it was a good knock, you know? And that was a nice bit. And when Jerry Stiller came in, the first episode he did, we had a thing where I was standing by the Costanza's kitchen door. And I said, you know, give it to me. And he would do this very gentle thing, because Jerry Stiller is the gentlest, sweetest man in the world. I said, no, Jerry, you got to do it. And he smacked it, and my head went flying into the kitchen door. And he eventually embraced it because he thought it was funny.
We were shooting the handicap spot, and we come out of the mall, and George's car has been destroyed by the crowd, who believes that he has taken the spot of a handicapped person, and they have wreaked their righteous vengeance upon his car.
We had to virtually destroy the car. Well, Larry David wanted to break out the window, the front window. So we gave him I guess it was an aluminum baseball bat, and he whacked it really hard, and it just bounced off. The window didn't break. But he hit it a couple more times finally, and it broke. But those car windows are quite tough, we discovered. And then the rest of the crew joined in and beat this car to death.
And George and I stand in front of the car, and we're looking at this totally destroyed machine, and we don't have a line for that moment. It's one shot here to pay this joke off, and then it's going to run forever until it turns orange on, you know, Channel 11 in 10 years. And that is probably the most exciting moment for me, when you can come up with a line and someone goes, that's good, that'll work.
You know, a lot of these scratches will buff right out.
Because that's the most baseball moment for me. You don't get a chance to throw me that pitch again. You know, you don't get that. You got to swing at that one and hit it.
I remember in the Junior Mint, when we read that script at the table, it was big. It was a big show. It was broad. We're going to drop a Junior Mint into open surgery, and the person still lives, and that sort of thing. We took a few steps ahead of the real, but for comedic purposes, it seemed to work out.
As I was writing that, I couldn't believe that they liked the story, because it seemed ridiculous and totally out of character for the show that had been very realistic and conversational, and totally implausible that there wouldn't be this physical barrier between people who could watch an operation and the patient. So I wrote it in great anguish, thinking that they'd throw this out or maybe produce it, which would be worst of all, because I'd be totally ridiculed and ruin the show that I was a big fan of.
I wanted to shoot the mint flipping in the air as he drops it. Well, they're very small, a Junior Mint. So I worked with the camera operator, John O'Terry, at the time, how can we do this? How can we shoot that? And he says, well, flip it up and we'll try to do it. Well, we did it several times with the little one, and we just couldn't catch it. So we went and bought a York peppermint patty, which is much larger. And we flipped that, and he got it the first time, but it was going up, so we had to reverse it in post-production so it would fall down. But that's the way we got that shot.
The next story that came to me was Jerry forgetting the name of the girl he's dating, which was just something that didn't quite happen to me, but almost happened to me many times. I'm just bad with names.
Oh, Jerry.
Oh, you. It just seemed really funny, the idea of Jerry going out with a girl and not remembering her name. And now he's stuck a week or two into the relationship, and he doesn't really know her name. And he's got to figure out a way to sort of find out her name. He almost gets caught as he's looking through her wallet, and he can't get to her name. But we hit a wall, and we sat in a room for a long time trying to figure out how to pay off that story. And again, everybody was pitching, and I pitched the idea of that maybe her name rhymed with a body part.
The name that the script had as her actual name was Cloris. And I remember thinking that really wasn't very good. But we went into the taping that night, and I sit in the stands during the taping. And between scenes, as this plot was emerging, the warm-up man asked people in the audience if anybody could guess what the name of the Jerry's girlfriend, in fact, was.
Cloris! Cloris! Kitty?
And one woman guesses Dolores. And I'm sitting there thinking, that is a better name than the name we have in our script. So I got out of my seat and I went down to the stage.
Oh! Oh! Dolores! It's Dolores!
And I remember as the audience was filing out, I heard the warrant man say to the woman, hey, you guessed the right name.
Two things in the Junior Mint that I thought were very, very significant. One was that we were going to throw this mint into the operating room floor, which you could never conceivably do, and that we were going to do it anyway because we didn't want anything to disturb our perfect plot. The other thing that was interesting to me in that episode is that when Kramer is trying to persuade me to go watch this operation, and I remember in rehearsal saying, okay, just let me finish my coffee and we'll go watch him slice this fat bastard up. And that line stayed in.
All right. Just let me finish my coffee. I'm gonna watch him go slice this fat bastard up.
This was the classic violation of every network rule of likability and relatability. I mean, we've created this guy now who's talking about someone on his deathbed. Those two things that happened in that episode, we were really out of the barn at that point, and we were really running wild across the prairie.
Everybody thinks that their life is worthy of a story, of a sitcom or a movie. Everybody thinks that what they're going through, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, it's just the fact that everybody wants they want me, if they run into me, to put their life up on television.
My very close friend, who is a lawyer, was always pitching me ideas for Seinfeld episodes, and none of them were any good. Then one day he's telling me this story about how he had a valet parker in his car who had such bad BO that no matter what he did, he couldn't get the BO out of the car. Never for a second did my friend think that was a good Seinfeld idea.
What's no? Ooh.
You stink.
What do you mean I stink?
You stink. Why don't you go take a shower?
I showered. Oh, but wait a second. Since I showered, I've been in the car.
So?
Don't you see what's happening here? It's attached itself to me. It's alive.
I like the smelly car episode a lot because I'm very fond of all the episodes that Peter Melman wrote, honestly.
Because Peter was always very kind to me. He gave me jokes. I didn't have very many jokes. I was a straight man most of the time. But I actually had a few in there. I got a few laughs, and that's gratifying.
You okay?
Yeah, yes. I just haven't seen you in a long time.
And you didn't expect me to be holding hands with a woman?
Oh, please. Me? Come on, that's great. Are you kidding? I think that's fantastic. I've always encouraged experimentation. I'm the first guy in the pool. Who do you think you're talking to?
I know who I'm talking to.
Of course you do, yeah.
I think it's a very logical move to make from George to lesbian, because really when you look at the choices available, you know, you can go with someone who's intelligent and interesting, or you can be with George.
It's just a great George thing to, you know, I was the coup de grace of her heterosexuality, and then she was off to lesbianism.
Susan!
Kramer!
What is going on?
You know what's going on? First, he vomits on me. Then he burns down my father's cabin. And now he's taking Mona away from me.
He stole your girlfriend?
Yes. She's in love with him.
Amazing. I drive them to lesbianism, he brings them back.
Yeah, Kramer had a way with the women. We had an episode there where we turned a lesbian into a heterosexual gal. Well, giddy up.